The story doesn't begin with crime. It begins with peace. A Colorado morning, the kind that makes a person believe suburbs can heal what war cannot. The sky is a pale, forgiving blue. The sun climbs without hurry, laying soft gold across manicured lawns and white trim hedges. Sprinklers arc into the air in synchronized sweeps, flinging beads of water that catch the light like shattered glass. The pavement holds that faint scent of last night's rain trapped in warm asphalt. Neighbor kids have left chalk constellations on the sidewalk, stars and crooked castles, and two pink bicycles lie on their sides and driveways like sleeping foals. Through it all, a steady sound, the metallic jingle of dog tags. Jake Thornfield walks with the careful pace of a man who has learned to ration the adrenaline in his own veins. 34 years old, dark tee, old boots. The left ear, the one that took more of the blast, tilts toward the world, short-changed. At his side moves Rex, 85 pounds of German Shepherd precision. The vest is black with white lettering that refuses misunderstanding. Service animal. Do not distract. The dog's posture is not pet-like, it's professional. Eyes scanning, ears sampling the wind, steps calibrated to Jake's stride as if the leash is more ceremony than need. Most people watching from living room windows, it looks like a man walking his dog in a neighborhood that sells itself on the promise of safety. But Jake knows this ritual is medication in motion. Rex isn't just company, he is instrument. Pressure therapy on cue. A living buffer for Jake's blind side. A sentinel whose calm body can drag a man back from the ledge inside his own head. 3 years earlier, Jake had crouched in Afghan dust, gloved hand inside a soldier's vest, feeling for a shard that wouldn't stop bleeding. He remembers the taste of grit, the heavy, wet cough of a man trying not to die, the ground jumping like an animal when the IED went. After that, some of the hearing gone on the left, panic episodes that arrive quietly, then roar, nights that felt longer than chemistry allows. A marriage that couldn't survive the tremors of someone else's war. Pinewood Heights was supposed to be the answer. 200 homes arranged like sheet music around a central loop, a small playground with a faded red slide, a little pond with ducks that ignore the HOA sign about not feeding wildlife. The covenants speak of preserving community standards in the same tone a preacher uses for virtue. The HOA newsletters are printed on glossy paper, bullet points, about mulch depth and fence paint, the gospel of property value. In the beginning, it works. The ritual works. Morning walks become a metronome that holds the day steady. Rex leans into him when the edges of the world go soft. His weight is gravity when breath threatens to float away. When footsteps come from behind on the blind side, Rex glides between and sits, a quiet wall, a sentence without words. I have you. Neighbors wave. Some know to ignore Rex's vest and resist the urge to pet. Others learn when Jake smiles and says, he's working. There is a rhythm to these streets that soothes. The whir of garage doors, the slap of newspapers on concrete, the kettle hiss from windows cracked open to let the cool morning in. Jake lets himself believe that this might be enough. Not happiness, maybe, but peace. That will do. Everything in a story like this needs a villain. Pinewood Heights doesn't choose a chain-link fence or a barking dog. It chooses a white Mercedes SUV with a vanity plate that says, PR to Vale. Her name is Karen Whitmore. She sits inside her car like a queen behind glass, oversized sunglasses reflecting the neighborhood back at itself. She is 52 and dresses. Like exercise is a brand, she has sold houses for 15 years and learned to say community the way some people say God. Newly elected HOA vice president, she campaigned on proper order and protecting property values, an argument that fits in clean boxes and is impossible to hug. People learn to move the blinds when sunlight flashes off her windshield, the way animals quiet when a hawk circles overhead. That SUV moves slowly, deliberately, pausing in front of houses the way a principal pauses by a classroom. Sometimes she rolls down the window and points her phone. Sometimes she gets out and stands there in neon sneakers and a crisp smile like a warning. At first, Jake ignores her. A man cannot fight every shadow his brain throws on the wall. But then the envelope shows up. Certified mail. Heavy paper. HOA logo embossed like a courthouse seal. Inside, the tone is handwritten into type. Notice of violation. Unauthorized pet. The covenants permit one small animal not exceeding 25 pounds. Rex is 85. Fine is $500 plus $50 per day until removal. Jake reads it at the kitchen table. Rex's head taking up the cradle between his knees. The first sensation is not rage. It's that quiet disbelief that comes when someone says, "The sky you see is a different color." He arranges the answer like a soldier arranges field dressings, with focus and calm. HOA guidance, veterinary certification, Rex's training evaluations. The letter from the organization that taught Rex to put a man's heart back in his chest with the weight of his own body. The file is polite, but thick. A translation. Here is the law in a language even denial can read. He delivers it himself because respect should be modeled even when not earned. He puts the packet in Karen's mailbox, hears the thunk, feels ridiculous. Optimism. Surely this is a misunderstanding dressed up as a crisis. The email that arrives 3 days later is a small, sharp thing that punctures optimism like a balloon. Documentation can be faked, it says. I know a scam when I see one. There are 100 things Jake could write back. He writes none of them. He closes his laptop and stares at the window, at the sunlight on the neighbor's trampoline, at a pair of finches arguing on the fence. He runs a hand along Rex's neck and feels his own pulse slow under his palm. Then the filming starts. Karen's SUV paces them like an aquarium's glass. Her phone angles over the steering wheel. If you listened close, you could almost hear the narration forming in her head. On the 4th day, she parks, steps out, pretends she's checking an app and says it out loud in a tone pitched for the microphone. Day 4 of monitoring alleged service animal. Subject engaged in normal dog behavior. Fraud obvious. The video goes up in the Pinewood Heights Facebook group. It gets heart reactions from the people who don't own dogs and angry faces from the ones who do. The comments are a bonfire to warm your hands over if you like that sort of thing. Jake tries diplomacy because he has learned the hard way that not all battles are worth the price of winning and because hope is a stubborn, foolish muscle. He invites Karen for coffee at the corner cafe with the crooked chalkboard specials. He orders black. She orders a latte with extra vanilla. He tells her about Afghanistan and the way night can follow you home. He explains deep pressure therapy and how a dog's weight can pull a man out of the rip current. He demonstrates calmly in the corner booth. Rex leans, paws up, the vest pressing into ribs until breath finds the rails again. Karen watches the performance with her head tipped, smile neat as a business card. I don't believe in invisible disabilities, she says, not unkindly, but not as a confession either. If you're really disabled, it should be obvious. Rex shifts, reading the tightness in Jake's jaw the way he reads a weather change. The vanilla in the air turns cloying. There is a particular humiliation when someone tells you your pain doesn't qualify because it isn't scenic. You can bleed out in silence and still be accused of being messy. 2 weeks later, a certified letter summons him to an emergency HOA board meeting. The community center smells like floor cleaner and old coffee. Folding chairs scrape. There is a table up front with pitchers of water like a middle school debate. A whiteboard shows a typed agenda. Budget approvals, fence height, alleged service animal noncompliance. Karen arrives like a prosecutor late to her own press conference. Manila folders are tabbed by color. Reading glasses sit low on her nose so she can look over them with maximum gravity. She has printed 17 pages about fake service dogs, each highlighted like scripture. If you are truly disabled, she says, facing Jake like he is an audience of one, you should prove it publicly. We need your military medical records, psychiatric evaluations, doctor's notes. The community deserves verification. The room shifts. A retired teacher named Gladys Rivera, who has been coming to these meetings since before half the board had mortgages, clears her throat. Karen, I don't think we... Karen's nails tap the clipboard. The sound is swift and precise. We are responsible for protecting standards, she says, and the word standards lands like a door closing. Jake has brought a folder too, but it isn't filled with scars. It's filled with law. He reads steady because learning to steady your voice is a skill like any other. Under the ADA and fair housing, you may not request medical records. You may not demand ID cards. You may not require proof of disability. You may ask only 2 questions. Is this a service animal required because of a disability? And what work or task has the dog been trained to perform? Silence does the thing silence does at a certain decibel. It makes the air feel thicker. Karen's jaw works like she's tasting something sour. Someone in the 3rd row, a young mom with a stroller, lifts a hand half-heartedly and lowers it when Karen looks at her like a teacher collecting cell phones. Entitled, People Don't Retreat When... The map corrects itself. They redraw the borders. You're hiding behind technicalities, Karen says, voice feathered with contempt. We'll create a community-administered test for service animals. Let the neighbors vote on legitimacy. It is always fascinating how easily rights become referendum in the mouths of people who believe they will never need them. The air pops with small reactions, gasps, scoffs, a whispered, "That can't be legal," that never quite becomes a sentence. The young mother stands, Ashley Cameron, hair in a hurried knot, a soft exhaustion under her eyes. My son's on the spectrum, she says, voice small but stable. He smiles when he sees Rex. It helps during transitions. That's a thing we rely on. She sits quickly, cheeks flushed, as if she's admitted something private on purpose. None of it slows Karen. She has allies. Bob Hendricks, a retired cop who misses patrol more than he admits. Martha Stevens from the PTA, who has learned that proximity to power feels like power. Dale Morrison, small business owner allergic to complexity who thinks property values are a civic religion. They nod in rhythm like metronomes for the hymn. She's singing, Jake could argue. He could stand and go louder. He has done both those things before in rooms where the stakes were blood. Today he plays a different game. He requests 30 days to gather documentation. His voice is professional and neutral, and inside the word documentation, he stores a plan. Because sometimes the wisest move is to let your opponent believe you're building a bridge when you're actually measuring the drop. In the next 30 days, Jake learns the shape of the thing he's fighting. He talks to Mrs. Patterson at the mailboxes, her oxygen tank humming like a distant fridge. She said my machine was an eyesore, the old woman confesses in a voice that apologizes for existing. Said it wasn't safe to have visible medical equipment near the clubhouse. He talks to a man with hearing aids who stopped going to meetings because Karen told him the feedback bothered people. He talks to the Camerons, who show him a letter about behavior noise thresholds that reads like it was written by someone who has never met a child. Word spreads that Jake is collecting stories, and gossip carries those stories faster than any flyer ever could. At the park, a woman pushing a stroller tells him about the ramp her neighbor had to fight for, even after a fall. In the evenings, people he's never spoken to lower their voices and admit what they wouldn't type online. We were going to sell, one man says, eyes fixed on the pond. I can't keep my wife in a house where she's scared to plug in her CPAP. Meanwhile, Karen escalates like escalation is an addiction. Flyers appear in mailboxes on glossy paper with fake statistics about service animal fraud. The heading uses a font that wants to be official. She positions herself at the community mailbox cluster around 5:30 like a sentry with a clipboard and intercepts neighbors as they fish for their envelopes. "We're clarifying pet policy," she says in the tone a person uses to sell a timeshare. "For everyone's safety." She has a new tool now, made suddenly legitimate by a board vote in a meeting that was posted with 2 hours' notice on a Facebook page half the neighborhood never checks. Her brother-in-law, Rick, hired as a property management consultant. He arrives every morning like a poorly cast extra in a procedural, hard hat he doesn't need, clipboard he can't fill, boots that announce themselves by grinding gravel into the driveway. He measures grass to the 1/4 inch and taps sprinkler. Heads with a pen as if they might confess. Rex watches him from the window with that steady shepherd suspicion, and only moves when Jake tells him to stand down. Jake does not engage. He installs 1 camera, then 2, then 3, small black eyes tucked under eaves and above the gate. Every letter from the HOA gets scanned and saved twice. Every Facebook post is screenshotted before anyone can delete it. He learns to screenshot the share link and the original, because one goes missing more easily than the other. He forwards the mess to a woman who lives 3 streets over, someone he waved at for a year before learning her name. Maria Santos, paralegal. The kind of neighbor who knows where to find things in public records because she has made a living going where systems don't expect you to look. Maria comes by with coffee that tastes like it could polish chrome and a legal pad already half full. "You're not the first," she says before the cups are set on coasters. She spreads out a rough map of the neighborhood on Jake's table and presses colored pins into it with a ferocity that would dent softer wood. Red is someone Karen? Targeted. Blue is a property bought after someone voluntarily moved. The cluster is not random, it's a pattern. People with walkers, oxygen tanks, service animals, kids with noise they cannot help making. The first time Jake sees the numbers in a shape, he feels something like combat focus lock in. It's not rage, it's purpose. Maria pulls bank records that show HOA payments to a business Rick incorporated from a P.O. box in a strip mall. She prints receipts for emergency tree services, billed to the HOA that match the dates of invoices from Karen's personal home security upgrade. She highlights, she stacks, she arranges. "She has been playing HOA like a piano," Maria says, and the metaphor is perfect because Karen's face when she speaks to a room is the face of someone playing an instrument she believes herself very good at. The neighborhood shifts around the story like a crowd making room for a stretcher. People who were neutral discover that neutrality flirts with complicity. Ashley starts walking with Jake and Rex on purpose, pushing the stroller at a slow pace, narrating out loud when she sees someone hiding behind a hedge with a phone. "We're on the public sidewalk," she says for the camera. "Rex is wearing a service vest. He's calm. We're not near anyone's property." It's part performance, part protection, part lesson. Other neighbors begin to drop in. Tom Rodriguez, retired Marine, walks a stretch with them some evenings, not saying much, his veteran's ball cap doing more talking than most op-eds. There are small kindnesses that feel like stitches in the fabric. A teenager chalks a big heart onto the sidewalk with the words, "Rex is a good boy," in bright letters. Someone leaves a bag of Rex's favorite tennis balls on the porch with a note for the neighborhood hero. Jake pretends he doesn't cry reading it. Karen adjusts her tactics the way a storm adjusts its route. When the HOA email list sends out a note about lawn mowing schedules, a second email arrives from Karen's personal address 30 minutes later with a PS about ongoing service dog fraud awareness. The posts in the Facebook group grow, more pointed, and the profiles commenting in support of her suddenly have no friends in common with anyone and post only once every 6 months about community values. The screenshots fill a folder that grows fat and undeniable. On a Tuesday morning, Rick is in the driveway again. He bends with a ruler and a sense of destiny. He's measuring the height of a rose bush with the intensity of a man diffusing something. "Can I help you?" Jake asks, voice polite out of principle. Rick looks up and recites a line from the HOA policy about vegetation clearance that seems to have been copy-pasted from somewhere with different weather. Jake nods, thanks him, and closes the door. 40 minutes later, the footage from the camera. Above the garage is labeled with the date and a tag, Rick, Rosebush, 3rd visit. He feels like he's back in a place where everything gets lined up before anyone moves. The incident at the cafe earns a second life. Karen tells her version to anyone who will listen and to several who won't. In her retelling, Jake performed a series of theatrical dog tricks and refused to provide basic documentation. The careful slant of those words is a reminder. This is not about truth, but about narrative power. A week passes, then another. Mornings settle into a fragile routine. Jake eats eggs, he replies to emails. He does the exercises the VA therapist taught him and hates how slow progress looks when you are the one measuring it. He takes Rex for the loop around the pond when the light is soft and the ducks still believe in their own importance. He is not naive. He knows it will get worse. Before any chance it gets better, he lives inside the long inhale before a crash. On a Thursday evening, he hears a voice that triggers something evolutionary in his spine before his brain can handle words. It is the voice of a person who believes she is the only adult in the room. It is the voice that has been narrating his walks from the safety of a windshield, now free of glass. He and Rex are on the public sidewalk in front of a hedge that is too square to be natural. The light is gold and soft, the kind of light painters chase. Karen steps from behind the hedge with a smile sharpened into a weapon. In her right hand is a clear spray bottle, sun catching the liquid inside and making it glitter. The scent that reaches them is wrong, not just vinegar, something harsher riding underneath like a hidden blade. "This," she says, voice syrup sweet, raising the bottle like a teacher raising a pointer, "will teach your mutt to respect property." Rex freezes, body tightening into a question. Jake's eyes drop to the nozzle, back to her eyes. He sees the tiny tremor in her wrist, the way people shake when they have crossed a line and intend to pretend they haven't. A few droplets missed, onto the concrete between them, a few inches from Rex's paws, and hiss the way cheap cleaners hiss on hot surfaces. The smell is a slap. Ammonia's sting crawls up Jake's nose and sits behind his eyes like a threat. Karen lifts the bottle higher, angling it where it should never go, and in that instant, fast and slow at once, the piece that began this story curdles into something else entirely. Rex's ears flatten. Jake's body remembers 1,000 hours of training and 3 years of not dying. He does not step forward. He does not shout. He reaches for his phone. Section 2. The hiss of liquid cut through the quiet like a rattlesnake's warning. For a fraction of a second, the world fractured into pieces of sensation. Sunlight turning the mist into glass shards, Rex's sudden yelp splitting the air, the acrid burn of ammonia clawing into Jake's nostrils. Combat instincts screamed. Move, neutralize, strike. But years of discipline took the reins. He didn't lash out. He didn't raise his voice. He documented. Jake's phone slid into his hand with a precision that looked rehearsed. Red record light blinking. His voice came out low, controlled, surgical. "Karen, you just committed a federal crime, on camera." Rex staggered sideways, pawing desperately at his face, eyes squeezed shut, saliva stringing from his mouth. The shepherd's whine was unlike anything Jake had ever heard from him. It was raw, broken, animal pain. Jake dropped to one knee, hands steady on Rex's shoulders, whispering the kind of soft words soldiers use when the bleeding won't stop. "I've got you, buddy. Stay with me. Stay with me." Karen tried to shove the spray bottle behind her back, the guilty reflex of a child caught with ink on her hands. It's natural, she spat, voice climbing into panic denial. Just vinegar and ammonia. Harmless. Everyone uses it for pests. Jake tapped his phone, pressed speaker, and let a different voice fill the street. Maria Santos. Calm. Precise. Deadly. Karen, she said, her tone like a verdict read aloud. Ammonia and vinegar together form chloramine gas. You didn't just spray harmless water, you chemically burned a federal service animal. That's felony assault under federal law. The word hung heavier than the summer air. Felony. Neighbors stepped out of porches, phones already raised, whispers slicing the dusk. Did she spray his dog? Oh my God, Rex is hurt. Isn't that guy a veteran? Jake rose slowly, pulling Rex upright beside him, one hand on his vest, the other steadying his phone. His voice never wavered. I'm calling 911. 20. Minutes later, the cul-de-sac pulsed red and blue. Officer Martinez, a tall man with weathered patience etched into his face, stepped from the cruiser. His boots crunched the gravel, nostrils flaring at the chemical stink that still hung in the air like invisible smoke. What happened? Jake answered first. This woman sprayed chemicals directly into my service dog's face. It's on video. He held up his phone, screen still glowing. Karen's words tumbled like marbles from a cracked jar. He provoked me. His dog attacked my roses. I was defending my property. Martinez crouched near Rex, careful not to touch, studying the wet streaks on the dog's fur, the reddened eyes, the constant pawing. His expression hardened. Ma'am, interfering with a service animal is a federal offense. We're talking $50,000 fine, jail time, felony record. The word landed like a hammer. Felony. Karen wobbled. Her sunglasses slid down her nose, revealing wide, frantic eyes. She turned desperately toward Bob Hendricks, the retired cop, her usual ally. He had been watching from his porch. For a second, she almost smiled, expecting backup. But Bob's jaw was set, his face grim. Without a word, he turned, closed his door, and left her standing alone. Neighbors swarmed the sidewalks now, drawn by lights and voices. Ashley Cameron, holding her phone high, whispered to the mother beside her. I saw everything. He was on the sidewalk. Rex never left his side. Others nodded, murmured agreement. The court of public opinion was convened, and Karen was already guilty. Animal control arrived. A flashlight beam traced Rex's muzzle, his reddened eyes, the damp fur. The officer muttered, Chemical burns. Minor but definite. Documenting. He snapped photos, took swabs, logged evidence. Karen's voice pitched, higher, shrill with desperation. This is harassment! He set me up! It was water! Jake stroked Rex's fur, whispering steadiness even as his chest burned with fury. He could have pressed charges right then. Martinez even asked, Do you want to file formal charges tonight? Jake shook his head, eyes like iron. Not yet. Give me 30 days. I want to see how deep this goes. Karen smirked faintly, mistaking restraint for weakness. She had no idea she'd just handed him the nuclear option on a silver platter. The next morning, Jake's kitchen smelled of Cuban coffee strong enough to melt steel. Maria Santos spread documents across his table, her pen tapping in rhythm with her excitement. Jake, you're not dealing with petty harassment. You're dealing with organized fraud. She stabbed a pin into the neighborhood map. Red dots for families harassed. Blue dots for houses sold cheap, then purchased by shell companies. Every target is someone vulnerable. Disabled, elderly, special needs families. Karen drives them out, then flips the houses under different LLCs. She's made over $200 grand in profit. Jake stared, hands clenched around his coffee cup. The pins looked like battle casualties on a map. Mrs. Patterson with her oxygen tank. The Martinez family with their autistic boy. The couple forced to sell when their ramp was denied. And Rick? Maria flipped a folder. Paid $15,000 as a consultant. No license, no registration. Pure embezzlement. Jake leaned back, running a hand down Rex's neck. The shepherd's breathing had steadied after the vet visit, but his eyes still watered. The injustice crawled under Jake's skin like fire ants. "She's not just a bully," he muttered. "She's running an operation." Maria nodded. "Civil rights violations, housing discrimination, financial fraud, conspiracy. She doesn't just lose HOA power, she loses everything." Karen didn't retreat. She escalated. Flyers appeared in mailboxes. Service dog fraud, what? Every homeowner should know. Stock photos of snarling dogs, fake statistics about emotional support scams, bold claims that Jake was gaming the system. Anonymous Facebook profiles popped up. Concerned resident, property values matter. They posted grainy, zoomed-in photos of Rex sniffing grass, captioned, "Dangerous animal disguised as service dog." One post claimed Jake staged the chemical attack to gain sympathy. Jake screenshot every post. Maria archived every comment. Each lie was another nail in Karen's coffin. And then came the bribe. Thursday evening, the air smelled of lawn clippings and gasoline from mowers. Jake walked toward the mailbox, Rex calm at his side. Karen intercepted him, vanilla perfume cloying. In the humid air, she clutched an envelope thick with cash. "Jake," she purred, desperation thinly veiled. "Let's be adults. $10,000 cash. You move. We all get peace. Think of it as a fresh start." Jake's phone was already recording from his pocket. He asked, voice neutral, "Are you offering me money to move because I have PTSD and a service dog?" Karen hesitated, eyes flicking side to side. "Well, when you put it like that..." Click. Recorded. Confession in her own voice, words spread like gasoline on fire. Neutral neighbors turned. Ashley rallied mothers, reminding them how Rex calmed her autistic son. Veterans bristled at the insult. Retired Marine. Tom Rodriguez muttered in a voice that carried across yards, "She thinks she can bully a Purple Heart. She just declared war on all of us." Karen tried another smear tactic. She hired a private investigator, Danny Kraus, a greasy ex-security guard with a nose for easy money. Paid him $3,000 to dig through Jake's records to prove his PTSD was exaggerated. Danny's investigation backfired spectacularly. He uncovered military commendations, valor citations, glowing testimonials from Jake's old unit. Even Jake's ex-wife, despite their divorce, wrote a statement about his genuine struggles and integrity. When Karen plastered flyers around town reading, "PTSD or fraud, you decide," the neighborhood snapped. Tom Rodriguez organized a rally in Jake's front yard. 30 veterans stood shoulder to shoulder, flags waving. Rex wore his vest, calm and professional, accepting pats from children. Channel 7 News broadcasted live, showing Rex performing service tasks, alerting Jake when someone approached from his blind side, applying pressure therapy when Jake's breathing hitched on cue. The segment went viral locally. Comments poured. In online, "Karen should be ashamed. This vet deserves support, not harassment. Protect service animals, period." Karen doubled down, spiraling online. Her Facebook rants grew unhinged. "Service dogs are just pets in costumes. Veterans milk PTSD for benefits." Every word was screenshotted, time-stamped, archived. Evidence for a federal hate crime case, gift-wrapped. 2 weeks later, she reached her masterpiece of self-destruction. At Safeway, Jake stood in line, Rex by his side. News cameras happened to be in the store filming a charity drive. Karen stormed in, hair frazzled, eyes wild. "You people think veterans deserve special treatment," she shrieked, voice cracking. "Disabilities are excuses. Real Americans. Work!" Gasps erupted. Cameras swiveled. Then she lunged. Her hands grabbed at Rex's vest, yanking. The shepherd stiffened, instinct pulling him between Jake and danger. He didn't bite, didn't bark, just shielded, trained to perfection. Security guards swarmed. Cameras rolled. Within hours, footage of HOA Vice President Karen Whitmore assaulting a Purple Heart veteran's service dog while ranting about fake disabilities spread across Colorado. Jake sat on his couch that night, Rex's head heavy in his lap. The video played on his phone. Karen's screech, Rex's steady patience. The crowd's horrified gasps. Jake stroked Rex's ears and whispered, steady and certain, "She just gave us everything." Section 3. The Pinewood Heights Community Center had never seen a night like this. Cars clogged the streets in every direction, headlights sweeping over familiar houses until the neighborhood looked like a stadium parking lot. People who hadn't bothered to attend HOA meetings in years now pressed forward in a restless tide. Some came because they wanted justice, others came because they wanted spectacle, and a few came because something in their bones told them that history, real federal history, was about to be written in their quiet suburb. Inside, the air was dense with bodies, heat, and anticipation. Folding chairs clattered as people fought for space. Those unlucky enough to arrive late leaned against walls or crouched near the doors. Cell phones rose in the air like a field of lanterns, red recording dots blinking. A local news crew set up tripods along the back, their cables snaking under chairs. 2 federal marshals stood near the exit, posture relaxed but watchful, like wolves who didn't need to bare teeth to command respect. At the front sat HOA President Bill Thompson, sweating through his collar. Normally his meetings were sleepy. Affairs, landscaping contracts, pool maintenance, a few gripes about trash cans left out too long. Tonight his gavel shook in his hand, and his voice quivered as he called the meeting to order. But the room wasn't waiting for him. The room was waiting for her. The double doors creaked open, and Karen Whitmore entered. She didn't look like the queen bee who once glided through Pinewood Heights with her sunglasses and Mercedes. Her hair hung limp, roots showing. The tailored yoga sets had been traded for a wrinkled pantsuit that looked borrowed from a thrift rack. Dark circles hollowed her eyes. Her perfume, once thick vanilla, was now barely detectable under the sour tang of stress. Behind her trailed a weary public defender who clutched a battered briefcase like he wished it would swallow him whole. Karen's eyes darted around the room, scanning every phone aimed at her, every glare from neighbors who once tolerated her authority but now burned with open hatred. For the first time in her reign, she looked like prey. Bill Thompson cleared his throat and began reading from the financial audit. His voice cracked as he listed line after line. $23,000 in unauthorized expenditures, $15,000 to an unlicensed consultant, a family member, $8,000 in personal charges misrepresented as community improvements. Gasps rippled through the room. Angry murmurs swelled into shouts. A mother near the back called out, "That was playground money! My kids waited 2 years for those repairs." Another voice snapped, "She charged us for her own security system." Thompson's hands shook harder. Furthermore, the audit reveals a documented pattern of discriminatory enforcement targeting residents with disabilities and families with medical conditions. The air shifted. It was no longer just financial. Theft. It was moral rot, laid bare under fluorescent lights. That was the cue. Agent Sarah Martinez rose from her seat among the marshals. Her suit was dark, her badge gleaming, her posture unflinching. When she spoke, her voice was steel, calm, precise, inescapable. This investigation has confirmed that Mrs. Whitmore engaged in systematic housing discrimination, harassment of disabled residents, financial fraud, and felony assault on a federally protected service animal. These actions constitute civil rights violations and hate crimes against a veteran of the United States Army. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, the rapid click of phone cameras capturing every second. Karen's lawyer grabbed her arm, whispering fiercely, but Karen had spent too many months believing she could talk her way out of anything. She surged forward and grabbed the microphone. "This is all lies!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. under hysteria. "Outside agitators! Fake news! I was protecting this community from freeloaders who want special treatment." Her words only made the crowd angrier. She jabbed a trembling finger at Jake, who sat 3 rows from the front with Rex calm at his side. Jake wore a plain shirt, his Purple Heart pinned above his chest pocket. Rex's vest gleamed under the lights, his eyes scanning, his posture steady. "You!" Karen screamed, spit flying. "You think you deserve everything handed to you because you got yourself blown up overseas. Disabilities are excuses. Service dogs are expensive pets in costumes." The crowd recoiled. Parents covered their children's ears. Veterans stood abruptly, faces carved with fury. A low hiss of disgust rolled through the hall like a storm front. And Jake stood. He didn't shout. He didn't stride forward. He simply rose, and the room quieted on instinct, as if it knew that this moment was the pivot point. When he spoke, his voice carried, not loud, but deep, grounded, honed by years of command and survival. "Karen Whitmore didn't just attack my service dog," he said. "She attacked every disabled person's right to live without fear. She attacked every veteran's right to dignity. She attacked the very principle that neighbors should protect one another instead of hunting the vulnerable." A hush fell. Even the air conditioner seemed to pause. Jake went on, his words sharp and measured. "She claimed she was protecting property values, but discrimination doesn't protect. It destroys. It dishonors the freedoms we fought for. It dishonors the flag we salute. It dishonors every soldier who came home carrying wounds no one can see." The silence cracked into thunder. Applause exploded. Veterans in the audience stood and saluted. Mothers clutched their children closer. Some neighbors wiped tears. Karen's face drained of color, her mouth frozen open like she'd just been struck. Then came the testimonies. One by one, residents rose. Mrs. Patterson wheeled forward with her oxygen tank, her voice shaking but clear. "She told me my machine was unsightly. I was afraid to use the equipment that keeps me alive." The Cameron family spoke next. "Our autistic son laughed every time he saw Rex. She called him a nuisance. She made us feel like our child didn't belong here." A retired man with hearing aids stood, hands trembling. "She said my devices disrupted meetings. I stopped attending because I was ashamed." Each story hammered another nail into Karen's coffin. Neighbors who had once been silent now shouted their anger. The room buzzed with fury, with solidarity, with justice long overdue. Finally, Bill Thompson called for the board removal vote. Hands shot up, a tidal wave of decision. 127 in favor, he announced, his voice breaking. 0 opposed, 3 abstained. Karen and her allies were stripped of power instantly, but the true climax wasn't the vote. It came when the marshals stepped forward. "Karen Whitmore," the lead agent said, his voice steady. "You are under arrest for federal civil rights violations, embezzlement, conspiracy, and hate crimes against a disabled veteran." The handcuffs clicked. The sound echoed like a verdict written in steel. Karen thrashed, screaming, "This is a conspiracy against successful white women." The room burst into laughter, sharp, derisive, final. Even her own lawyer buried his face in his hand. Cameras zoomed in as she was led out, wrists bound, her screams swallowed by the roar of justice. Jake stepped outside into the night air, Rex at his side. Neighbors crowded around him, clapping, cheering, hugging. For the first time since moving to Pinewood Heights, he felt the neighborhood wasn't just a place, it was a community. 6 months later, the outcome was sealed. Karen pled guilty to multiple federal counts, 18 months in prison, $75,000 in fines, a lifetime ban from holding HOA office. Her real estate license revoked in 3 states. Her marriage crumbled under the weight of her disgrace. She became a national cautionary tale, her name cited in federal hate crime training seminars as a textbook example of suburban tyranny. Jake, meanwhile, didn't just win, he built. The $150,000 settlement and recovered HOA funds launched Rex's Fund, a program to train service dogs for disabled veterans. In its first year, 15 veterans across the country received dogs like Rex, lifelines with fur and loyalty. Rex himself became a therapy ambassador, visiting VA hospitals, calming men who still woke up screaming in the dark. Pinewood Heights transformed. Property values rose, not because of Karen's obsession with order, but because of positive press about inclusivity. Disabled families moved in, drawn by the community's reputation for acceptance. Flags waved proudly on porches. Kids no longer whispered fraud when Rex passed. They ran up and asked politely, "Can I pet him when he's off duty?" Even Karen's former allies changed. Bob Hendricks began volunteering with veteran housing programs. Martha Stevens organized the first neighborhood accessibility fair. Dale Morrison, once obsessed with property values, admitted publicly that compassion had made the neighborhood stronger than Karen's rules ever had. Jake launched a YouTube channel, Service Dog Rights. Within a year, it had over 100,000 subscribers. His story became precedent in 37 civil rights lawsuits. Colorado passed a law requiring HOAs to undergo disability rights training, informally dubbed Rex's Law. Jake testified before Congress, his Purple Heart catching the light as Rex sat calmly at his side, reminding lawmakers that service dogs are not pets, but medical equipment with heartbeat and fur. 1 year later, Pinewood Heights held its first Community Heroes Day. Veterans, families, disabled residents, children, all gathered in the park. Burgers sizzled on grills. Flags waved against a perfect blue sky. Rex wore a ribbon that read, "Community Hero," as children petted him gently. Laughter echoed where once intimidation had ruled. Jake stood in the center. Rex pressed against his leg, heart steady in his chest. For the first time since Afghanistan, he felt something complete. Peace. And as the sun set behind the houses, he realized the greatest truth of all. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's building something. So strong and beautiful from the ashes that your enemy's hatred becomes the foundation of everyone else's hope.